This is blasphemy. This is madness. This is Sparta!
Right then, guys, and welcome back to Let's Talk About. You've got your hosts, Liam and Billy. And today, if you hadn't guessed the clue by now, you'll have seen the trailer, but we are doing Greek mythology and history.
Yes, we are. Bit different to the last two.
Yeah, a little
Ghosts
bit
and
different. Just a little bit different, but that's the whole point in this podcast. We're going to have a variety of different things that we're going to speak about. Things that we've previously talked about, so obviously hoping that you've heard our Ghost and Supernatural episode and our Aliens episode. We will talk about them again. It's not like one of those things where we talk about it once and that's it. You're never going to hear it again. So
Yeah, well, that's like you said. Our point is we have no boundaries. There's no limits.
Yes,
And talk about what the hell we want when we want.
exactly.
And there's going to be plenty more stuff about ghosts and plenty more stuff about aliens as well.
Exactly that. So don't think that it's going to be one episode of that and that's it. I know a lot of our followers, we've got a lot of paranormal investigators following us and paranormal ghost stories, crime and everything. We've got all them podcasts following us. So don't think they're the only ones we're going to do, guys. Absolutely not the case.
Nah, far from it.
So
Right then, mate, this is all you today.
yeah, pretty much. So keeping in line with the whole 3 side of things, we are about, probably by the time we've released this episode, we should have hit 400 followers, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah, thank you guys for that. But this episode was conceived after we hit 300, and obviously there was a clue in the trailer in itself, so that's one of the stories we're going to be talking about, the story of the Battle of Thermopylae, and the
I will say, so after we hit the 300 mark, what we hopefully want is by Christmas we want to hit 500 followers on the Instagram page and hopefully have over 100 downloads altogether on the podcast. So that's our goal. So
Yes.
if you want to help us get to that, get following and get listening.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate, we've had a lot of support so far. It's been fantastic to see, people sharing our page on the stories on Instagram and things.
Yeah, exactly.
Do the same on Twitter, share the episodes. We'll share back for you. We're not selfish. We're all about the community here and helping other people achieve their goals, as with them helping us achieve ours.
Yeah.
So, now the 3 main things I'm going to be covering today for you, Liam, is the Spartan Agoge training.
Right, fair enough. Is that what we're starting with?
That's what I'm going to start with.
Right.
Have you ever heard of this?
No.
So this is the training regime that all Spartan warriors would go through pretty much as soon as they're born, as soon as they leave the woman's womb, mate.
Fair enough. Bear in mind, I will be bringing everything back to the film 300.
Yes, of course. So, guys, if you haven't seen the film 300, please go and watch that. It's brilliant. So they do
Massively dramatised, though.
Oh yeah, it's. I'm gonna have the real story of the Battle of Thermopylae for you today, guys. Whereas the movie itself it's a movie. You know what I mean? And especially with Greek mythology and things, they've got to throw pieces into it. But
And it's a film and they have a well-known Scotsman playing the fucking king.
damn right, yeah. I thought he did a brilliant job though.
He did.
Gerard Butler as Leonidas was spot on. I think the only other person who might have played that role as good is what's his name? Gladiator.
The fuck do I know?
Gladiator.
What, Russell Crowe?
Russell Crowe, that's the one. I think he did an alright job. Anyway, so you do...
Should we at some point, but they were fucking This Is Sparta. They were our best version of that.
Yes, absolutely. I love that.
We might do that.
We might do that. Who knows? Anyway, moving on.
I seen a comment you like. I watched a couple of clips of the 300 on trailer the other day.
Yeah.
On YouTube, and I seen someone. One of the comments on it was about obviously Xerxes, the character on it.
Yes.
That is a really tall camp version of Darth Vader.
It's essentially how he's portrayed in the film. Yes, portrayed, not purveyed.
I don't know.
Portrayed, sorry.
Right, let's get cracking.
So we'll start with the Agoge training. Now you do briefly see this in the film 300.
Yeah, when he gets chucked in with Wolf.
Doing the T sign in him there, guys. Chucked in with Wolf.
That's more Yorkshire, that was. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah. Yes, but yeah.
Right.
So it starts off as soon as we don't know if this is factual, but all the points lead to it. This is probably what they did. As soon as the baby's born, they are taken to, I cannot remember the name of the mountain. It'll probably be in here somewhere. We'll get to that anyway. They're taken to a mountain.
Rosemary topping.
Absolutely not. Don't search that, guys. They'd be checked to see if they had any disabilities, if they were deformed in any way, if they were too small. So if you were like me and you weighed 5 pounds or so as a baby, now you're no good. And they just chuck you off a cliff, mate.
I'd have been sound. I'd have been a prime specimen, mate.
I was a small baby, mate, so...
Well, I was. I've never once been small, so...
Yeah, well, there you go. I always have, unfortunately.
Exactly.
My dad's 6'2". My mum's 4 foot fuck all. And I'm in the middle, 5'7".
And I'm like 6'2", 6'3" on a good day, so like I say, I'd have been made for it.
Yeah. You'd have made a good Spartan, I think.
Blind as fuck, though, so I'd have been useless with a fucking bow and arrow, I know that.
Luckily, the Spartans didn't believe too heavily in archery. Anyway, so...
Like I said, believe as if it's a belief system.
So here we go. So this is stage 1. So when Spartan children were born, the male elders of the family decided if the infant was fit to live and be raised. According to some accounts, one test was to drop the baby into a vat of wine, and if it cried, it was considered too weak. I absolutely love that, by the way. If it doesn't like the alcohol, it's it's not fit to survive.
Well, Kate made a cracking Spartan then.
I think you would have as well, mate.
I don't like wine.
Oh, fair enough. It was considered too weak. So, but this may be... I'm not even going to try that. It may be, not true, essentially.
Right, fair enough.
Male children were raised primarily by their fathers until the age of 7, when they entered the agoge and were known as paides, I'm assuming, boys.
There is going to be words in this that neither of us can pronounce, so
yeah, absolutely.
Bear with us.
Yeah, it's probably best off me just telling you what I know, if I'm honest with you, mate. I do have a sheet of paper in front of me, guys, with lots of facts and stuff, but...
Read what you can. Like I say, when we get to the hard words, like I say, unfortunately, it's just going to have to be a case of we read it how we can.
Yeah. So between the ages of 7 and 18, the boys and youths were organised into packs and herds, and placed under the supervision of young adult Spartans. They were encouraged to break the exclusive ties with their own natal families and to consider all Spartans of their father's age to be their parents. So essentially, everybody who's a
Your elders.
Yeah, your elders essentially. You're taught to respect them and treat them as you would your father.
Yeah.
So for the first 5 years in the agoge, between the age of 7 and 12, boys were taught to read and write, but the programme emphasis was on endurance events, athletic competitions, military prowess, and teaching them to survive and outwit others. Somebody writes, Plutarch, I'll give it that, Plutarch writes, of reading and writing, they learned only enough to serve them turn. All the rest of their training was calculated, therefore, as they grew in age, calculated to make them obey commands well, endure hardships, and conquer in battle. Therefore, as they grew in age, their bodily exercise was increased. Their heads were close clipped, and they were accustomed to going barefoot and to playing for the most part without clothes.
So that's basically, you're in your duds, you've got no shoes, and we're shaving your head.
More or less.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just to dumb that down.
So, during this period, the child soldiers were also taught to steal, especially to steal food, as they were fed little. If they were successful, even if the theft was detected afterward and the culprit clearly suspected, no punishment was given. If they were caught, they were severely beaten. Plutarch notes.
So it's basically, if you're caught in the act, you're fucked. But if you get away with it,
you've succeeded. Well done.
Yeah.
You shall not be punished. So the boys make such a serious matter of their stealing that one of them, as the story goes, who was carrying under his cloak a young fox he had stolen, suffered the animal to tear out his bowels with his teeth and claws, and died rather than have his theft detected. And even this story gains credence from what their youths now endure, many of whom I have seen expiring under the lash at the altar of Artemis.
Christ.
So yeah, it's essentially saying that the beating would have been worse
Yeah.
than getting
Your guts ripped out.
Your guts ripped out, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about. Right. So let's move on to stage 2. You get the idea from stage 1. There's a little more on it, but they're the main points anyway.
So basically, just to sum up again, so brutal as shit. You chucked in some wine. If you don't like it, you're fucked.
Yeah.
We're shaving your head, taking your shoes off you, and you're going around in your duds.
Yes, and you were encouraged to steal as well.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much stage 1 between the ages of 7 and 12.
Right.
You got to think. Imagine that being age 8 or 9 and go steal a fox.
Yeah.
Huh? Anyway, stage 2. Training in speech continued in the traditional period when one became known as, here we go, Paidiskoi, a bigger boy.
Fair enough.
Around the age of 12, sorry.
So hitting towards teenage years then, basically,
Yeah,
I'm guessing what they're meaning.
Getting there, yeah.
Yeah.
When the boys reached this age, they were favoured with the society of lovers from among the reputable young men. The elderly men also kept close watch of them, coming more frequently to their places of exercises and observing their contests of strength and wit. But with the idea that they were all, in a sense, their fathers and tutors and governors of all the boys. In this way, at every fitting time and in every place, the boy who went wrong had someone to admonish and Why are they using such big words? Punish the boys, all right? So wherever they went, whenever they did something wrong,
They get a slap.
They get a slap.
Right.
So yeah, so the boys were always watched over, and they were taught essentially to train naked. You know, I don't know why it was a big thing in Sparta. You know, it was the naked man's body was a prized possession in a sense. So a lot of their exercise and things they would be doing naked. Anyway, once the boys had hit the age of, I believe it's 17 or 18, they would be classed as then a Spartan man.
Yep.
But at which point, in the final stage of the Agoge training, they would be told, they'd be sent off into the wild, and if they came back, then they're essentially a Spartan. Yeah. If they go out without a kill or things like that, then they would come back and they'd have failed, essentially. If they didn't come back, then they're dead, they're not a Spartan. They never
exactly.
made it.
Yeah, like I said, this is like this is the whole beginning, isn't it, of the film 300 and everything, and obviously
exactly.
King Leonidas is training, and obviously he kills his great big fucking wolf thing and whatever, and comes back with that, and then it's like, right, he's going to be
exactly that. Yeah. So, and that was every single boy that was born in Sparta. They would go through the Agoge training. Didn't matter who you were, whose father you had, anything, you would go through that regardless.
Yeah.
There were also
very brutal.
It is very brutal. They were also taught one of the main Spartan things is the phalanx formation,
right?
Which was essentially, just to explain it to you guys, where the shield would be held from thigh to neck, and the spear just above. Whereas your shield would essentially guard the man to your left, and the man to your right's shield would be guarding yourself.
Yeah.
So this formation was used, obviously, famously in the Battle of Thermopylae, which we'll get onto next. But that was the tactics of the Spartan that nobody kind of sussed, and they were all trained this. You would fight as a unit.
Yeah.
You were a family. You weren't like, it was never one soldier kind of thing. And they were formidable in terms of that training. It was what made them almost unbeatable, unmatched in the ancient times.
Yeah.
In terms of how good of a warrior they were. So now you know how the Spartans were raised. Liam, I'm going to move on to obviously the main reason the film 300 was filmed.
Yeah.
Which is the Battle of Thermopylae. So obviously a lot of it in the film, it's true, but it's exaggerated.
Oh, it's extremely exaggerated because the film 300, it's based on the Frank Miller graphic novel, isn't it? So like you say, it's more based on that. Like he done Sin City as well. So like it looks very similar to that at times anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
Like you say, like the wolf thing that he fights at the beginning, it's got big fucking bright red eyes and stuff, and it's just like
it's
very over the top. And like you say, obviously Xerxes in it is like fucking 15 foot tall sort of thing, and it's just
which obviously wasn't true.
Yeah, obviously
he was known as a god king though.
Yeah,
and all kings of Persia were actually known as god kings. So
Have you seen the second film, 300, though?
I have.
Rise of an Empire.
That is also true. A lot of it, again, same thing, taken out of context.
Yeah.
But
well, I've again, when I was looking at clips, I seen obviously the birth of Xerxes scene.
yes, yeah.
As for a bloke who is losing his hair, the way he goes into that fucking fountain thing with a fucking massive head of hair and great big fucking beard, to then come out bald as fuck.
No. So
I wouldn't be doing that. Doesn't matter if I'm 15 foot and a god king. I would rather keep me hair.
No, absolutely not. So I don't know if my story here actually has the reason that Xerxes went to war. So I'm going to explain that.
Right. Go on
just
then.
dead quick for you. So obviously King Darius,
Yes.
the third, I want to say, might be the second. He was Xerxes' father, and he tried to conquer Greece previously. I think it was maybe 10 or 20 years before Xerxes did.
Right.
But he failed at the famous Battle of Marathon, where the Greeks essentially beat him back. Now, Xerxes grew up to... Darius, I believe, was killed. He was assassinated. Xerxes took the throne, and he wanted to finish what his father started, essentially. So he amassed what was known then as the greatest army of all that the world had ever seen. Obviously, in most tales from ancient times, it will say 1 million in the Persian army, or 2 million. The modern sort of representation of it would be an accurate estimate of around anywhere from 150,000 to 300,000, somewhere around that mark. And when you think about that, though, that in them days especially, that is a massive, massive, massive army.
Yeah, well, it is anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Even today, that's huge.
Exactly.
It's you can't even imagine that. Anyway, let's get on to the Battle of Thermopylae. So that's why Xerxes wanted to finish what his father started. That's why he attacked Greece. Battle of Thermopylae, battle in central Greece, which was in 480 BCE, at the mountain pass of Thermopylae during the Persian Wars. The Greek forces, mostly Spartan, were led by King Leonidas I. After 3 days of holding their own against the Persian king Xerxes I and his vast southward advancing army, the Greeks were betrayed and the Persians were able to outflank them, sending the main army in retreat. Leonidas and a small contingent remained behind to resist the advance and were defeated. That's the moral of the story, essentially.
Yeah.
So, the Battle of Thermopylae's political origins can be traced back to Xerxes' predecessor, Darius I. Okay, so you might mention this then. Who sent heralds to Greek cities in 491 BCE in the hopes of persuading them to accept Persian authority. This offended the proud Greeks greatly. The Athenians went so far as to toss the Persian heralds into a pit.
Yeah, well, this is the famous scene, isn't it, in 300?
Not yet. Not yet. This was even before then. Yeah. Not yet. That's cool. The Athenians went so far as to toss the Persian heralds into a pit, while the Spartans followed suit and tossed them into a well. Oh, so that was on that bit. I do apologise, mate. Yeah, it was that bit. In 400, this is the famous "This is Sparta!" Boosh! Get in there, you twat.
There's Billy's attempt.
I've got to be quiet, man. I don't want to be too loud. So, in the year 480 BCE, Xerxes invaded Greece as a continuation of Darius' original plan. He began the same way his predecessor had. He sent heralds to Greek cities, but he skipped over Athens and Sparta because of their previous responses. Many Greek city-states either joined Xerxes or remained neutral, while Athens and Sparta led the resistance with a number of other Greek city-states behind them. Before invading, Xerxes implored the Spartan king Leonidas to surrender his arms. Leonidas famously replied, "Come and take them." I love that line. And in Greek, in them times, it was pronounced molon labe, I believe. Xerxes intended to do just that and thus moved toward Thermopylae. Xerxes led a vast army overland from the Dardanelles, accompanied by a substantial fleet moving along the coast. His forces quickly seized northern Greece and began moving south. The Greek resistance tried to halt Persian progression on land and the narrow pass at the narrow pass of Thermopylae, known as the Hot Gates, and at sea nearby in the Strait of Artemisium, the Greek army was led by Leonidas, who was estimated to have had around 7,000 men. We'll get into that in a moment. Xerxes, on the other hand, had anywhere from 70,000 up to 300,000. Despite the disparity in numbers, the Greeks were able to maintain their position. Their strategy involved holding a line only a few dozen yards long between a steep hillside and the sea. This constricted the battlefield and prevented the Persians from utilising their vast numbers. For 2 days, the Greeks defended against Persian attacks and suffered light losses as they imposed heavy casualties on the Persian army. Now, just to relay back on that he had 7,000 men. He did altogether, but him and his 300 Spartans, his personal bodyguard, they led the line, and they pretty much sent the rest of the Greeks to the back. And I know he sent a certain amount to the hidden pass, the goat path that led behind the Spartans. Reason being is obviously Spartans were well trained in what I was talking about earlier, the phalanx formation, and just simply didn't trust the rest. So he led the line with his 300 Spartans. Anyway, so he continued to batter the Persians and, hit them. They had that many casualties. It was beyond Xerxes. Xerxes apparently went into this absolute rage, sending his absolute best warriors and stuff, such as the Immortals, who in the film portrayed as like little zombie creature guys, I guess, once the masks come off. It's not true. The story of the Immortals is the reason they are called the Immortals is they were always in a number of 10,000. And whenever 1, 200, 1,000, however many died, there would be people waiting to immediately replace them. Hence the name, the Immortals. There was always a certain number of them, so you could never fully vanquish them. And they were the best warriors out of the Persian Empire, which at that point in time was the largest empire in the world. So, only when the Greeks were betrayed did the battle take a detrimental turn for them. Ephialtes, a Greek citizen, desiring reward, informed Xerxes. So again, I just want to mention, obviously in the film he's displayed as a little horrible hunchback creature-like guy. Don't know whether that's true or not. He might have been deformed or something, but essentially he was just after. It was a Greek after a reward, and he
a shithouse,
a proper shithouse. So
to put it in our speak.
Yes, in our speak. Basically, he's an arsehole.
Wank stain.
Yes, pillock brain. So anyway, he informed Xerxes of a path that went around Thermopylae, thus rendering the Greek lines useless in preventing forward advancement of the Persian army. Because there was that many in number, obviously the whole point in going at the Hot Gates would narrow it down, and the Persian army wouldn't, the numbers would count for nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
But once you're surrounded, changes everything. Xerxes took advantage of this betrayal and sent part of his army along this path, led by Ephialtes himself. After reaching the other side, the Persians attacked and destroyed a portion of the Greek army. This was the force that Leonidas had placed there to watch it. This forced Leonidas to call a war council, at which it was decided that retreating was the best option. However, as the majority of the Greek army retreated, Leonidas and his 300 bodyguards, some helots, or helots, however that's pronounced, basically people enslaved by the Spartans, and 1,100 Boeotians, I believe it's pronounced, remained behind, supposedly because retreating would defy Spartan law and custom. They held their ground against the Persians, but were quickly defeated by the vast enemy army, and many, if not all sources differ, were killed, including Leonidas. News of this defeat reached the troops at Artemisium, and Greek forces were there retreated as well. The Persian victory at Thermopylae allowed for Xerxes' passage into southern Greece, which expanded the Persian Empire even further. Today, the Battle of Thermopylae is celebrated as an example of heroic persistence against seemingly impossible odds. Soon after the battle, the Greeks built a stone lion in honour of those who had died and specifically for the fallen king Leonidas. In 1955, a statue of Leonidas was erected by King Paul of Greece in commemoration of his and his troops' bravery. The Battle of Thermopylae also served as the inspiration behind the film 300 in 2006. Now, obviously, they call it a Persian victory. I disagree. For me, it's a massive victory for Greece because it gave the Greeks time to see this heroic sacrifice.
Yeah.
To come to terms that they needed to unite and come together to defeat this Persian Empire.
Yeah.
And, you know, it motivated them, essentially, it inspired them. And it turns out that eventually, I think it was the War of Pal, I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, the final war, the Greeks actually beat back the Persians, and they went back to the empire, and that was that. And then that's how it finished. But today, when you think about it, if they were fighting for freedom, essentially, the Spartans, in what they believed in.
It's like a Greek version of Braveheart.
Yeah, it exactly is that, mate. Yeah, it's a beautiful story, and it's if that never happened, what would have happened to the world? Because if the Greeks had submitted to the Persian Empire, God only knows how far they would have spread into the world. I don't believe there would have been a Roman Empire had that not happened.
Yeah.
Well, had the Greeks not won, should I say.
Yeah.
And most of our world today comes from both ancient Greece, you know, democracy, came from Athens, philosophers, things like, you know, science and things, art, lots of literature, you know, the Iliad from Homer.
Exactly.
Which is what we'll get into in a minute.
And I'd have never got to go on my first ever holiday because that was in Greece.
And there you go, yeah. We could have all been slaves today. Slavery would have never ended. Who knows? But yeah, it's a beautiful story, and I think he has to be one of humanity's greatest heroes in terms of what he sacrificed there. So yeah.
Inbred, but yeah.
I knew it was coming.
Well, the word though, but that's the way it was back then, though.
I was going to say, yeah, back then.
Obviously, I looked into a bit of it myself, and then found out that his queen was actually his niece, and he was just like a bit. I know, obviously, it's different back then, and like you say, well, like most royal families, they like to keep stuff in the bloodline.
Oh wow, yeah.
Am I wrong, Billy?
No, you're not, mate.
Exactly.
You're not. But yeah, that was pure Spartan blood was cherished.
Yeah,
so
it's what always made me laugh though when you were talking about the training thing, like, you know, when the baby's out, they've got any deformities.
Yeah.
Well, quite a few of them probably did.
Well, that's probably why it was a thing.
It's fucking all inbred. I mean, he probably was coming out with extra eyes and stuff.
Yeah, more than likely. But that's why it probably was a thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, true, probably, yeah.
But yeah, so that's essentially the story of 300. What are your takes on the actual story? It's the film does a good representation. It's just dramatic.
Yeah. Like I said, obviously the film does tell the story very well, but obviously just visually, very, very much dramatised.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But like I say, it's going to be. But no, like, fair play.
Yeah.
They did what they had to do.
Yeah, it's true.
Like I said, if it wasn't for a little shit house, it probably would have been a lot quicker as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. A lot of people say that the Greeks may have actually won and, you know, caused that many casualties in the Persian army that Xerxes might have just thought, fuck this, I'm off.
Yeah, exactly.
I want none of that.
Aye.
If that's what 300 Spartans can do, imagine what 10,000 can do.
Exactly.
Because Leonidas was actually told not to go to fight the Persians. You know, he consulted the oracle, so to say, and the ephors.
Yeah.
And they told him that no, don't go. And it was said that they were paid off by the Persians to say that, but he ignored them, and he took his 300 bodyguard for a walk up north.
Aye.
And obviously defended the hot gates. But yeah, it's just a heroic story. And motivation beyond belief. I'd love to go to the actual... Thermopylae is actually still a place.
Yeah.
The sea isn't quite where it is anymore. Obviously, time has changed, and it's a lot further away now, but there's still the statue that says, "Here lie obedient to their laws, or stranger passing by, tell the Spartans stayed obedient to their laws." It's somewhat along the lines of that, but it's. I'd love to go and see that, mate.
Well, one day maybe you might.
One day maybe I might, mate. Sooner, hopefully, rather than later.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Right then, guys, so we're going to have a quick break and just play a little trailer for another podcast that we're listening to at the minute, so we'll speak to you after this.
Certainly will.
Are you struggling with a lack of access to captivating entertainment and media? Are you faced with constant judgment and ridicule from friends and family for your inability to respond appropriately to sensitive situations? If this sounds like you might be suffering from being emotionally dead inside. But it's not too late to make a change. One Nothing Podcast is a newly available treatment for being dead inside. Taken just once every 2 weeks, One Nothing could make a world of difference. By combining carefully measured dark humor to the amazing original formula of grisly fatalities, One Nothing Podcast has successfully entertained thousands of people suffering from death inside. And with access across all podcast platforms, treatment has never been more readily available. But don't trust my word. Here's some real-world testimonials from a few of our listeners currently undergoing treatment.
From consistent doses of One Nothing Podcast, my posture has greatly improved due to being kept on the edge of my seat.
The One Nothing Podcast comes on, everybody be like, shut the f*** up. I'll be quiet, but when the episode's over, I'll be talking again.
Oh my gosh, buddy. I used to be on so many medications for blood pressure, and then I listened to One Nothing Podcast's episode on Kitty Genovese, moved into an apartment on my own, and haven't needed it since. That one really got my blood pumping.
You know, listening to One Nothing Podcast, I'm not constipated anymore. I'm just full of shit.
So what's stopping you from great entertainment?
One Nothing Podcast is not intended for all audiences. Listeners under 18 years of age should obtain permission from your parent or guardian before downloading. Tell your therapist if you're predisposed to whining, complaining, reading podcasts poorly, being overall combative, or being easily offended, as One Nothing Podcast might not be right for you.
So stop letting great content pass you by. Talk to your therapist today to see if One Nothing Podcast is right for you.
Right then, guys, we are back, and we are going to talk about the story of the Iliad, the story of Troy,
Yes.
the Trojan War.
Aye.
Now, the thing is with the story of Troy is, did you know, you've seen the film Troy, haven't you?
Yes, but not for a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
Well over 15 years since I've watched that.
So if you haven't seen the film, guys, can't recommend it enough. It's star-studded as well. Orlando Bloom, Brad Pitt, Sean Bean. There's a fair few others in there as well, but it's a fantastic film, brilliant, beautiful story. Now, did you know that the story of the Trojan War is essentially shrouded in... No one knows if it happened.
What, with the big fucking horse?
Yeah.
Right. So no one knows if it actually happened?
No, not factual.
Right.
Well, it was believed to be a complete myth
Right.
until the 1870s.
Right.
A man by the name of Heinrich Schliemann. He was in... Can you guess where he's from first?
Germany, probably.
Correct.
Yeah.
I
was waiting to say like a Scunthorpe or something.
He was an archaeologist. Well, he wasn't so much an archaeologist. He was, but he was more rich. He had the money to pay an archaeologist to come out and find the city of Troy.
He's a bigwig.
Troy, He fell in love with the story. And in modern day Turkey, in Hisarlik, the city of Troy was supposedly found in modern day Hisarlik in Turkey.
All right.
Sorry, mate. Don't know where I got that.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Close enough. At least you got the H bit right.
Yeah, I got the H right, mate. He made a discovery where he found the city in the exact location as to where Homer portrayed the city of Troy to be.
Right.
In the Iliad.
Should we, for anyone who somehow doesn't know, dumb down the whole horse thing?
I'm going to get to that.
Right,
I'm
fair
just
enough.
explaining this first so that
go
when
on
we
then.
get into the story. At
Right.
the end, I want to ask if you believe in the story or if you don't.
Right, fair enough.
He found a city. Anyway, time passed. He died. They didn't think it was the city because it was nowhere near big enough to what Homer described it to be.
Not Simpson, by the way.
Yeah, not Simpson. I don't even know what his second name is. Homer from ancient Greece.
Right.
He was a famous poet, essentially.
Yeah.
It wasn't until after the death of Heinrich Schliemann, I believe in the 1980s maybe, might have been earlier, I can't remember, might have been later, they had began excavations again and they found a larger portion of the city, that was like lower. So what they found at top, what Heinrich Schliemann found, was the citadel, essentially, the main part of the city, where the kings and queens supposedly stayed. And then the lower part was obviously where civilians lived.
Yeah.
And the time frame and everything about it was perfect. It matched up. The city of Troy was actually the archaeological find one. it had time from, it was much older, and it had been rebuilt a few times as well. In more recent times of Troy existing. It was rebuilt after the Greeks had
Destroyed
the city.
Right, fair enough.
They found burn marks as well, so it is now known as, it definitely was the city of Troy.
Right,
so
fair
there was
enough.
a city of Troy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the story goes, essentially, there is the woman who launched 1,000 ships. Sorry, the face that launched 1,000 ships. That'll do. Helen of Sparta. She was said to be the most beautiful woman in the world at that point. All the kings of Greece wanted her
To have a go.
Yeah, wanted to have a go, wanted to make her their wives, and she came up with the idea that whoever she chooses, if anything was to happen to her, that the other kings would protect her.
Right.
And obviously at that point, none of the kings could say that won't happen, because then she wouldn't choose them to be their wife, essentially.
Right.
So she was clever, supposedly, if she existed. Anyway, Menelaus is who she chose, the king of Sparta. Well, he's actually the king of Macedonia. It wasn't until he married Helen of Sparta that he became king of Sparta. So that's
I'm just trying to get my head around the fact that she was called Helen.
Yeah, Helen
You
of
know
Sparta.
what I mean? No, it's
Yeah.
just it
Compared
wasn't
to
what I
the
was
name-
expecting.
Compared to the names back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. But anyway, so story goes that the Trojans were making peace. They'd sailed over to Sparta, blah, 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 and Paris, the Prince of Troy, younger brother of the famous Hector, tamer of horses, had won her love over and kidnapped her. Nobody quite knows what happened, whether he kidnapped her, whether she went voluntarily, or whatever happened. And Paris took her back to Troy. Obviously, Menelaus was rived up beyond belief, and went to his...
Understandably.
Yeah, absolutely. He got the most beautiful wife any man could ever ask for, and then she just disappears in the middle of the night.
Aye.
So anyway, Menelaus goes to his brother, Agamemnon, who at the time was the most...
That's more like it.
Yeah, Agamemnon, mate.
Yeah. That's what I want to hear.
He
Fucking
was the...
Helen.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? Helen. Even Paris, though. But anyway. He went to his famous brother Agamemnon, who at the time was the most powerful king in all of ancient Greece. He pretty much commanded all of Greece. He conquered it all, more or less.
Just to interrupt you, it does do, because you said the name Paris again, it pisses me off when people name people after places.
Yeah.
It does me. It's like, obviously, gays obsessed with fucking Twilight.
Yes.
Bloke, and that's called Carlisle.
Yeah, Carlisle.
That's not a name, it's just a shithole.
Carlisle. Oh, dear.
Anyone who doesn't know what Carlisle is, Google it and you'll understand.
One of my mates' dad's from there. He loves the place.
Well, Kay's brothers were born there, but it still doesn't make it any less of a dump. You ever been to Carlisle?
I haven't, mate.
I have. It's fucking bleak.
Oh, great. Anyway, enough of offending Carlisle. Back to ancient Greece.
Aye.
So he went to his brother, and his brother, we don't really know, but he would have controlled the Aegean back then.
Right. So what's that?
The Aegean is the sea that separates modern day Greece and Turkey.
Right, fair
essentially.
enough.
So
Right.
he controls the whole area.
Right.
Yeah. Troy was also supposedly a very rich city and a very strategic, city.
Oh,
It
you
was
just mean
built.
like rules that area?
Yeah.
I thought you meant controls the sea, like some sort of Moses shit.
Essentially, he would control the sea because he has control. No, that portion, the Aegean.
No, but I meant control it, like, making the seas part.
Oh no, not quite Poseidon.
That's what I thought you meant.
No, not quite Poseidon. But
Right.
the next bit, he did go to Poseidon
Right.
and ask for a safe voyage across to Troy. Anyway, somebody, I can't quite remember who it was, but one of the gods, obviously this is Homer's Iliad, it's going to be put out of proportion. They always are. Said that for a safe voyage, he would have, and a victory in Troy, he would have to sacrifice his daughter, in which he did. Supposedly.
Dark times.
There is a whole myth thing that Paris was given a golden apple by Aphrodite. There's so much story about the gods and things during this thing of Troy, but I'm going to leave that part out because it's obviously myth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it that we don't know what's myth and what's not. Anyway, so the Greeks sailed to Troy. They had the greatest warriors of the time with them. Achilles, who was known as the greatest warrior of all time, essentially, and is still known today as one of the greatest warriors to ever live.
Apart from if you booted him in the back of the foot.
Apart from if you booted him in the back of the foot.
Then he'd
Now,
go
the
down like a
story-
sack of shit.
Story goes behind that is man was supposedly an immortal goddess. Dipped him in the river Styx, but the ankle that she was holding him by when she dipped him in, obviously didn't enter the water. So
Exactly.
that
Which is
was
where
his-
which is even I know is where the lovely phrase "your Achilles heel" comes from.
Exactly, and that was his Achilles heel, quite
Exactly.
literally. But
Knowledge.
knowledge.
Oh, who knew skill could actually be helpful? Because, you know, I'm always going to need to know that, aren't I?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. So anyway, there was Odysseus as well, known as Odysseus the Cunning.
Isn't he the goalkeeper for Nottingham Forest?
Fuck off.
No, I'm telling you.
Odysseus.
I'm telling you,
I
right?
didn't know that.
Right, carry on, I'll find it.
And then there was Ajax as well, who was like a giant of his time.
Ajax?
He was known as Ajax. Can you stop with the football?
Because we've just done our football pod, so...
Footy's in his head, guys. Football or soccer, depending on where you're from.
It's football.
Yeah. They all set sail across to Troy. And day one, obviously, the big battle took place, blah, blah, blah. Story goes...
Hang on. Here you go.
Oh, yeah. That's
Say
his first name as well, Odysseus.
Fucking right, you slag.
He's probably named after him, then.
Possibly.
So they set sail to Troy. Achilles being the greatest warrior, doing what he does best, kill, blah, blah, blah. Lots of death and destruction. Now, apparently the siege, according to Homer, lasted 10 years.
Right.
Modern estimates, the longest battle, like the Peloponnesian was, for example, which was between Sparta and Athens, would have lasted months.
Yeah.
So maybe it lasted a year, we don't know. 1,000 ships, total estimated army of 50,000. It's not an out of proportion like the million Persians that attacked Greece. It's reasonable.
Yeah.
But yeah, the walls of Troy were that high. It was just essentially a suicide job.
Yeah.
For the vast majority at the beginning of the war. Achilles is the main hero in the story. He supposedly, now we don't know who Patroclus is. Some people say it was his lover. He was a man.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong with that at all. Some people say it might have been a family relation, a close
Probably
friend.
was as well.
General on the side, yeah. We don't know. But the reason I've told you about him, you'll understand in a moment. So, anyway, Hector was known in Troy. He was supposedly the greatest Trojan warrior
Right.
there had ever been.
I just like the whole idea, though, that, like you say, they've done all this and they get there and then Achilles walks to the front and he's like, boots the fucking door and he's, my foot, I'm fucked.
Fuck off. That's not how it happened.
I like the idea of it, though, it'd be funny.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But anyway, Hector, he was known as the greatest warrior of all the Trojans.
Right.
Some say that he was greater than Achilles before a certain scenario had taken place.
Right.
Anyway, lots of war happened, lots of death, lots of destruction. I'm leaving out quite a bit of the story because, in my opinion, there's a lot of myth in there as well. Gods taking sides of each army at different points, shit like that.
Yeah.
At one point, Achilles had a fallout with Agamemnon because now Achilles was like the only warrior back then to sort of stand up to Agamemnon, and that was unheard of. He was king of the Myrmidons, so he was a king in himself, but Agamemnon was the king of kings, so to say. He commanded all of Greece, all of the kings. Achilles only went to Troy because he wanted his name to last through the ages.
Right.
And if he did exist, it worked.
Yeah.
Anyway, he had a fallout with Agamemnon because Agamemnon stole a priestess that he had kidnapped from the Trojan army. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, but he had apparently fallen in love with this Briseis as well. So he's bisexual, maybe. Who knows? He had stolen this Briseis,
Right.
and Achilles was enraged by it. And
So what's a Briseis when it's at home?
a what?
A Briseis.
Briseis.
What's that? Who's that?
So she was said to be the cousin of Hector and Paris. She
Right,
was a priestess.
Right, I'm with you. Right, I'm with you now.
She was a servant of Apollo.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
to say.
Aye.
We don't know if that's true either. It's just one of those things in the Iliad part of the story. Moral of the story: Agamemnon kidnapped Achilles' prize.
Right.
And Achilles was enraged by it. He was offended. So Achilles refused to fight for the Greeks, and this demoralized the Greeks. He was the greatest war hero. And he was a fantastic general as well.
Yep.
it got to a point where there was a point in the Trojan War where the Trojans attacked the Greeks, which wasn't too common. They normally waited for the Greeks to attack them. And Hector led the army of the Trojans and attacked the Greeks. And the Greeks were being slaughtered. They were taking horrendous tolls on the army. And it was Patroclus, or Patroclus, however it's pronounced. In the film it's Patroclus, so I'm going to stick with that. He begged Achilles to go to war. His men are dying, Greeks are being slaughtered, and Achilles refused, stayed obedient until Agamemnon begged, essentially, to have him back.
Aye.
He refused to fight. So Patroclus went and stole his armour and weaponry and led the Myrmidons, who was Achilles' men, and led the lines of the Greeks right back into battle. Total different story at that point, according to Homer. Then the war started to favour the Greeks in this battle.
Aye.
It wasn't until Hector and Patroclus met. Obviously, at this point, everyone still believes Patroclus is Achilles. He's wearing his armour and things, leading the Myrmidons. And Hector believes it's Achilles as well. They have a little scrap in absolutely no time because Hector was that good of a fighter. He slit Patroclus' throat and killed him, essentially.
Aye.
Body was taken back to Achilles. Achilles was enraged beyond belief. Now, Achilles went to find Hector immediately. He was completely blinded by rage and, seek vengeance. He's the greatest warrior of all the Greeks as well, bear in mind, so that must have been a sight. But it got to a point where him and Hector had a fight. In Homer's Iliad, it says the fight lasted 3 days. Blown out of proportion.
Obviously.
Probably longer than normal.
Probably about half an hour.
Yeah, which is probably longer than normal in them days, to be fair. A one-on-one sword fight.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Days.
Achilles ended up the victor. He struck down, the other person that was known as the greatest warrior.
Mm-hmm.
And he, completely blind in rage, he desecrated his body. He tied him up to his chariot and dragged his body around with his chariot for
as they do,
a little bit while, right in front of the Hector's family. So King Priam, who was the king of Troy at the time, around him, Hector's wife, Paris, his brother, all sorts. Anyway, at some point, we don't know whether it was a separate war, whether it was a separate battle or the same battle that Achilles slayed Hector in. Paris, at some point, released an arrow from his bow that hit Achilles in his Achilles heel, in the heel, which was his only vulnerable spot. Now, again, nobody quite knows if that exactly killed Achilles. My theory might be that, I don't know, maybe he was climbing a wall or he was up somewhere high, I don't know, and he's been hit with a bow in the ankle and it's led to his death. I'm not saying that's what killed him, it's led to his death, which I believe happened.
Nice little infection or something.
Yeah. Something along the lines of that. So that's the story of Achilles. You've got Achilles and Hector, the greatest warriors of the Trojan War. They're now dead.
Right.
And it wasn't until the supposed 10th year, maybe the 4th month, that Odysseus had decided to create a Trojan horse, as we know it today.
Yes.
Basically, it was a wooden structure that was in the shape of a horse.
Mm-hmm.
And they hid 20 of Greek's greatest warriors that were left alive in it. So Odysseus, Menelaus, king of Sparta, I can't remember if Ajax was still, probably Ajax if he was still alive at the time, a few others. And then the Greeks had pretended that they'd fled, essentially, after that battle had finished. Death of Achilles hit them so hard, this, that, the other. That's it, we're done. 10 years down, we're gone. So Priam and all of his god people, the priests and things, say this is an offering so that the Greeks have a safe passage across the safe passage across the Aegean back to Greece, and that was an offering to Poseidon and to Paris or somebody in Priam's one of his generals, had said to burn it. He said no, that would offend the gods. So he brought the Trojan horse into the city. Now, a lot of people at first had said that there's no way that a Trojan horse, like that has got to be a complete myth. But modern times, there is a lot of people saying that no, that could have been a thing. That genuinely could have happened in that time period. There was one point where a certain army, I can't remember, or a certain empire had created a large bull that essentially did the same thing, but it was used for siege warfare.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and there's the brazen bull as well.
yeah, of course, that's one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Horrible form of torture that is.
Yeah. Fuck that.
Essentially, if you don't know what that is, guys, it's brass. It was a bull that was made out of brass, and they would
Shot you in it.
times, yeah, they would shot you in it and
Stick a fire underneath.
and you'd burn alive. And, awful.
Basically cook you.
Yeah. Cooking a steak, mate. Anyway, the Trojan horse. So the King Priam decided he was going to take it into the city and leave it at the Temple of Poseidon. Greeks inside waited till nightfall. They came out with the horse quietly, whatever, I don't know. Got to the gate.
It'd be a lot better if it was like that scene on Ace Ventura when Nature Calls when he's going out the rhino.
Yeah, it's true. Anyway, they gave signal to the rest of the Greek army, and they...
What, we're over here?
Yeah, pretty much. Just big flame brazier or whatever it was the night. Greek army made the way. They opened the gates and let them in, and they completely just sacked the city. It wasn't like a point of, we want to take this city now. This was, it's taken us this long.
It was a case of, fuck it, we're just going to burn it to the ground.
Yeah, they threw, they killed all the women. They threw the babies from the top of the walls. They burnt the city to the ground. Awful, essentially. Yeah. But that's the story. Now, the city itself that has been found today, in wherever it was, began with H, modern day Turkey.
Was it Heslik?
Might have been. Hissalik.
We're getting closer.
We are.
We're getting closer with it.
They actually found, at that time period as well, that the city had gone through a siege. That it was burned, essentially. Destroyed. And that's pretty much how the story ends. Apparently Helen actually... Menelaus was going to kill her, but struck by her magnificent beauty again, he took her back to Sparta, and they lived happily ever after. Nobody knows. Moral of the story: a woman who was that beautiful launched 1,000 ships.
Right.
That's the bit that I'm like, nah, I don't think that happened. It would have been a strategic thing. Troy was known as a rich city back then, and they have evidence to prove that now from the archaeological finds. Mm-hmm. I believe there was a Trojan War.
Yeah.
There's no proof of the heroes. There's no tomb ever found of Agamemnon, of Helen, of Achilles even. That's one of the most sought after tombs of modern days. Obviously, this happened, so in the time that the Battle of Thermopylae happened in 480 BC, this was around 1,000 years before that.
Right.
500 years before the time of Homer. There was no writing. Writing literature, wasn't invented then.
Yeah.
So it was all word of mouth until Homer created the Iliad, the story about it. Mm-hmm. But all Greeks knew about it. Alexander the Great, greatest conqueror of all time, or one of the. He supposedly visited the tomb of Achilles and paid homage to him,
right,
to bless him on his, his conquer of all of Persia, the Persian Empire.
Yeah.
It's been known throughout history as that it did happen. As the greatest story that the Greeks have. But yeah, it's just finding all the evidence. Now, I believe that there was a Trojan War. The Greeks did sail. There was probably a massive army as well.
Aye.
And that there was a city of Troy that did burn. I would love to know that those heroes were real. Achilles, Hector,
Ajax,
Agamemnon. Yes, Helen. Helen, I think, is a bit far fetched. Achilles' story, it's shrouded in that much myth. His mother being a mortal goddess, him being one of the sons of Zeus. But they were all like that back then. If you had a hero...
of course there was. I mean, like essentially, it's very similar to like the stories in the Bible sort of thing. It's it's along them sort of lines. Like you say, it's like a game of Chinese whispers.
Yeah.
The story gets told and told and told and told and exaggerated the more it goes on.
Exactly that. But I'd love to be the person who found Achilles' tomb, mate. Imagine that.
You won't be short of a few quid, I know that.
Yeah, absolutely, mate, absolutely. Well, what do you think? Do you think it happened? This is a man that likes evidence, by the way, guys. I mean, he believes in aliens, but we all do to a certain degree, so...
No, I believe it happened. I don't believe it happened to the extent that the story says it happened.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, to me, it must have happened, or else, I mean, where would the story have come from? Something obviously happened.
Yes, yeah.
I don't believe it was obviously anywhere near to the extent, like you said, fucking 10 years and shit.
Yeah.
That's obviously bollocks
Yes, yeah.
and what have you. But yeah, like you say, something must have happened.
Do you believe in the story of Helen? Or do you think he was a character in Homer's Iliad?
Again, I think there could be something to it, but exaggerated.
So what I believe there was a beautiful woman called Helen.
Yeah.
Exaggerated in how beautiful she was, but I think what had happened is probably somebody from Troy had taken her, whatever, slept with her, something along the lines, angered Menelaus, who was at the time King of Sparta, who went to his brother, who was almighty and powerful, and wanted to, avenge himself, essentially. The disrespect that the Trojans had shown. Plus, Agamemnon would have wanted to sack Troy because it was a strategic position. He'd have controlled the Aegean, and it was rich.
Yeah.
It's a rich city.
Yeah.
So, I believe that a lot of the characters are real. I'd love to know that Achilles was real, because he's like, since I was a child, I've loved that film, and he's been my hero kind of growing up.
Yeah.
So, along the lines of it, we know Leonidas existed, and he's on the sort of same ballpark as that.
Yeah.
Just whether he was real or not. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Obviously, it's been your hosts, Billy and Liam. This has been a bit of a different one. Normally it's one of us convincing each other about something. So let us know how you feel about this one. This has been more of a storytelling and what do you think kind of episode. Obviously there's a lot to Greek mythology. I just wanted to cover the most famous ones. We started off with history, with known fact, which is the Battle of Thermopylae. We talked about the Agoge training, and then we have the more myth side of it, which is the Battle of Troy. But
I wouldn't say myth, I'd say disputed history.
Yeah, disputed history.
Yeah.
So when we talk about mythology, guys, we're talking about, Zeus and Aphrodite and Athena, all of that, which we will get into at some point.
Yeah, we can do that again at some point.
Yeah.
But
But
so I think that's it then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right then. So, you do the rest of the day, like?
So, I don't know. Probably go and have a drink tonight and all that. What are you doing?
Where are you going?
Probably go to the Winchester, mate.
Yeah. I'm going to Pacific Playland.
All right, yeah. Good place, that.
Yeah, sound.
And on that note, guys, I think that closes the episode.
It does, and there's your little clue. So any guesses about what we're going to be talking next week, let us know.
Absolutely.
And we shall speak to you next time.
We certainly will.
Right then, thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.